today's top boxing news.
I'd like to get Clarissa next. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that looking at ideal world, I'd like to have a couple more, but I understand that it's a business, and I wanna kind of ride that wave. I think, yeah, I was shown. I showed that. Look, I'm okay I can get up off the floor. I've still got to work on my stand up, adjusting to the whole defending kicks, that sort of thing, takedowns. I don't want to show too much of the stuff that I've been working on because I never really had a chance to show it on Saturday. So yeah, I'm quite confident that I'd do Clarissa in the cage. I really do.
Clarissa has caught wind of these comments from Savannah Marshall, and you know Clarissa, she's never at a loss for words. She said, Savannah, I'll say this. I'm a better street fighter than a boxer. You can't beat me in anything combat.
Some people don't like the idea that Clarissa and Savannah would meet each other again in an octagon instead of a boxing ring, under MMA rules instead of Marcus of Queensberry rules. Some people. I don't mind. It don't bother me. There's enough bad blood between them, and in the octagon, they're at the same skill level, aren't they? That it's an even fight. It's still an even fight.
Does Savannah Marshall stand a better chance of beating Clarissa Shields
In MMA.
in the octagon than the boxing ring? I happen to take in Savannah's mixed martial arts debut, and she looked good out there. She looked capable. It seemed to come more naturally to Savannah than it did to Clarissa. I've seen all three of Clarissa Shields' MMA fights. In all three of them, she was taken to the ground.
Savannah got taken to the ground in her fight too, but she didn't spend a lot of time down there. It wasn't long before she rose to her feet, got out of the hold, and got back on her feet.
Whereas Clarissa, in the octagon, in every MMA match she's had, in every MMA fight I've seen her in, she was taken to the ground and she struggled to get up. She struggled to rise to her feet. It does seem to be an area of weakness for her.
Maybe a little more than Savannah?
Now, we didn't see a lot of kicks, a lot of mixed martial arts from Savannah in the octagon. In truth, we didn't see that many from Clarissa either.
We didn't see any kicks, we didn't see any joint locks, any submissions or wrestling moves. We haven't seen that from either of them.
What highlights they've had in their MMA matches really do seem to center around their natural forte. Their boxing, standing up, and striking. That applies to the both of them. But because Clarissa seems a little weaker on the ground than Savannah does, and she does seem weaker, she struggles to get up.
You think that Savannah should take her there?
To some, it may seem a redundancy that two professional boxers, active boxers, would have their rematch in a different sport, a different discipline, in the octagon instead of the boxing ring. But in the octagon, Savannah might stand a better chance of beating Clarissa because if she approaches this as a mixed martial artist, not a boxer in the octagon, but a mixed martial artist, if she takes Clarissa to the ground, she can beat her there.
I don't think Clarissa would be expecting that. I don't think most people would expect that.
That element of surprise and how Savannah might approach this rematch, a passing thought that if Savannah were to beat her in the octagon, they could have a trilogy in the boxing ring. First fight's in the boxing ring, second fight's in the octagon, then you can cap it all off with another boxing match. Get the most out of this thing, because they're still the two biggest names anywhere at or around 160 and 168 pounds.
They need each other.
I think Savannah accepts that reality a bit more than Clarissa does. Clarissa likes to act like she's swimming in big fights and big options, big opportunities, that she don't need Savannah, but
I don't get the sense she's gonna make with Vanessa Joannese what she made fighting Savannah, what she will make fighting Savannah again in the octagon.
Savannah beats her in the octagon. That opens the door for a trilogy, another payday for the both of them. But if she loses, well,
there goes the neighborhood.
They can make the most out of their rivalry depending on how this goes. And like I said, fighting in the octagon under these rules, it did seem to come a little bit more naturally to Savannah than it did for Clarissa.
Maybe it's because Savannah's a lot leaner.
The weight is distributed more evenly across her body. Maybe that's why she was able to get up off the floor a lot easier than Clarissa has. Clarissa's got a heavy bottom, big legs, big ass.
Big.
Think on that. I still think punch for punch, Savannah's a stronger puncher than Clarissa. Even though they fought already, what I noticed in their initial meeting was Savannah was too close. She was smothering her own work, fighting Clarissa within close quarters.
Those long arms can't generate optimal power at that proximity.
Things she needs to correct, but the bottom line is, in an octagon, I actually think Savannah stands a better chance of beating Clarissa than in a boxing ring.
If, not light heavyweight isn't my final destination, I really want to go up to cruiserweight, by the time my career is done.
And cruiserweight is what weight?
I think it's 200.
Ooh, so that's cruiserweight, just another.
Yeah.
So you're a weight class away from going to actual heavyweight.
Yeah. But we're gonna move one step at a time. We got light heavyweight, and that's a division I've been wanting to go to for a long, long time. I mean, I did my 30-day weigh-in yesterday. I only have 13 pounds left to lose. So, I feel great.
I don't doubt that he does. I don't doubt that David does feel great, not having to boil down to 168 anymore. He recently parted ways with his strength and conditioning coach, Memo Heredia, who's been with him for, I think, at least the last two, maybe three fights. He's not with them anymore, likely because the Benavidez camp don't want to pay the extra money for that guy, since they don't think they need him. Not if they don't have to make 168 anymore. In that same interview, David stated that he walks around at around 200 pounds. So if we call it an even 200, that means he's got to cut 32 pounds to get down to 168.
Not this weekend.
For this weekend's fight, he would have only had to cut 25 pounds, 25, which will feel like a breath of fresh air for David Benavidez, who's been killing himself to get down to 168 for what's it been? A decade now?
27 years old.
10 years younger than former WBC light heavyweight champion Alexander Gvozdyk, who's 37. David Benavidez sports a professional record of 28 wins with no losses, no draws, 24 knockouts. To Alexander Gvozdyk, who sports a professional record of 20 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 16 knockouts, having been knocked out once in 21 professional bouts. That was many, many years ago in 2019 at the hands of Artur Beterbiev, who's knocked out everyone they've put in front of him, Alexander Gvozdyk included. But David Benavidez, at least to me, is no Artur Beterbiev. No, I don't think he packs the single punching power in both hands the same way that Artur does.
That's what makes this weekend's fight so intriguing.
For me, it was the selling point, and whether or not I would purchase that pay-per-view, I intend to. I don't give a shit about Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin.
Not really.
Not by itself, but as a package that you get Benavidez versus Gvozdyk and Davis versus Martin in the co-main and the main, well, that's worth $1.
Something.
So Alexander Gvozdyk, the former champion, came back early last year in February after taking a long hiatus away from the sport. He sat out all of 2020, all of 2021, and all of 2022, but came back last year in February.
In the Josue Ubando fight that he had in February, he didn't actually make light heavyweight for that fight. He came in just above light heavyweight, but for the last two, he made the weight.
I think that's an important detail, that even at this age, Alexander Gvozdyk can make the weight. This is a guy who takes care of himself. He must, if he can make that weight in his mid to late 30s.
After all this time.
And when he came back on the undercard of a Marv Nation show. Marv Nation is a small promotional outfit based out of the West Coast, very well-to-do. They do a lot of shows out there. And he didn't look like an old man. He didn't look like a guy who'd been out for 3 years.
Looked the same as I remembered him.
Granted that he's a few years older, got a little bit less hair on his head, but he's still capable and still a nuanced fighter. Dynamic.
Naturally bigger than the kind of guys David Benavidez normally fights. He won't have a size advantage over this guy. Tail of the tape, they're about even.
Though obviously, Alexander Gvozdyk is a lot more accustomed to fighting men his size at this weight than David is. David is making his light heavyweight debut. This is a good acid test for him.
It is.
Because I feel he's largely benefited from his height and his length and what he rehydrates to the night of a fight at 168, at 175.
It's not that much of an advantage.
It's a lot harder to get away from a guy, a really big guy that's bearing down on you the way David Benavidez bears down on guys like Caleb Plant, Demetrius Andre, these shorter, slinkier fighters that aren't big on power. They ain't got much size.
Gvozdyk does.
Because they're boxers that would normally fight on the outside behind straight punches, it's harder to do that when the guy's bigger and taller and longer. But for Gvozdyk,
David's not taller or longer than Gvozdyk. He's not actually bigger than Gvozdyk.
he's not. So for Gvozdyk, working behind the straight shots and the straight punches won't be as difficult as it may have been for Caleb Plant, may have been for Demetrius Andrade, Kyron Davis, Ronald Ellis, and just those guys that David fought at 168. He's got a bona fide 175-pounder in front of them. I saw them next to each other at the kickoff press conference for the show, and there was a noticeable difference that, yes, in terms of the tail of the tape, they're evenly matched. About the same height, about the same length, but there's a difference in build.
Gvozdyk's got a wider frame, broader shoulders.
A more pronounced jawline. He actually looks like the beefier guy in terms of muscle. Lean muscle.
Not kloogie muscle.
You know, David Benavidez at 168, he's always a very fleshy guy. Not defined, not ripped.
The night of a fight.
Fleshy, just rubbery guy around the midsection.
He's got man boobs too.
How he looks the night of a fight at super middleweight, and how he might look the night of a fight at light heavyweight. Is he going to be fleshier, more rubbery?
Because when I look at Gvozdyk, he doesn't look like that. He looks solid.
A solid light heavyweight with a solid light heavyweight's frame.
It's not often that David Benavidez looks the smaller man of the two, but when you see them side by side,
he does look smaller than Gvozdyk. He does look smaller in terms of build and frame and musculature. That Gvozdyk is a bigger man, slightly.
Not in terms of height and length,
but in build. That makes this a very interesting fight. That is a very interesting component that for the first time, David won't be the bigger man in the ring.
I'm not a big believer in David's boxing or David's power.
That is, at 168, he has enough size and a good enough engine that he can outlast and overpower those guys down there at 168, but this ain't 168.
You come forward on this guy the way you do on those other guys, you might get a different response from him.
Said it before and I'll say it again, that David has largely benefited from a noticeable size advantage he's had over every single guy he's fought at 168. So now that he doesn't have overwhelming size to use against his opponents the way he normally does, can he stay in character? Can he stay the Mexican monster?
Because he makes a lot of mistakes.
He leaves himself open for a lot of punches that other guys cannot otherwise exploit because they ain't got size and pop like Gvozdyk does.
This is a very intriguing fight. We'll talk more about it later on in the week.
Oh my God.
Well, if you wanted to know how Tyson Fury is handling his first recorded loss, his first professional defeat on paper, even though it should have been John McDermott, better still.
How's he holding up?
He was escorted out of a bar this past weekend, visibly inebriated and losing his footing. Face planting outside of that bar. When a guy Tyson Fury's size gets to that point,
Jesus, how many pints did he put away?
You'll say, well, he just made a lot of money, a fuck ton of money. He's entitled to party a little bit. And I'm not saying that he isn't. I'm just saying that you're a public figure. They know you on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. In America, in the UK, in the world over, you are one of the more recognizable athletes in sports today. You let yourself get to that point in public?
Show some restraint.
I don't think he can, because he's down in the dumps, he's likely depressed. He knew this would happen. I told you from the beginning. He never fancied that Alexander-Usyk fight. He never wanted it. But the Saudis, offering as much money as they did for him to have it, they didn't give him much of a choice.
That Tyson Fury could barely handle any scrutiny in victory. So in defeat,
he could barely handle sitting in the hot seat when he was an unbeaten fighter, when he still had his O intact. Now that he's been defeated, no, I don't think he's taking it well. Of course not.
He's entitled to have a few brews.
Not saying that he isn't, but you do have to exercise some restraint, don't you? When you're a world-class athlete or not. And if Tyson Fury didn't, well, it says it all, doesn't it? That for anyone who's holding out hope that maybe Tyson Fury can figure out this puzzle.
Because he activated his rematch clause.
It's supposed to be going down in December. The wheels are already in motion, and this is what he's doing. Do you guys out there seeing that? Do you think he makes it to the rematch?
Is he stable enough?
The subject of Tyson Fury's mental health is a bit of a contentious subject because some people do think he's got a mental illness of some kind, perhaps bipolarism or something like that, while others think it's all just a clever ruse. That when he said he was mentally unfit to fight all those years ago, ahead of what was supposed to be the Klitschko rematch, he wasn't actually mentally ill or going through anything. He was just under scrutiny from UCAD and the BBBOC, and that was his only out.
To say he was mentally ill.
He was on the hook to give Vladimir Klitschko a rematch, a second fight, and that was his only out.
To say he was mentally ill.
He had a lot going on at that time. There was a lot on his plate. He didn't want to deal with it, so he opted out by saying, he's got some mental health things going on.
It was an act?
Maybe it was a bit of both. Two things can be true at the same time.
Speculations aside.
About whether or not Tyson Fury actually has a mental illness. If we just stick to the boxing, the nuts and bolts boxing, I always thought Usyk was a better boxer than Tyson Fury. And contrary to the opinions of a few, I didn't think he'd be too big and too strong.
Give me a break.
Now I'm left wondering if he can get it together long enough to whip himself back into some kind of shape, some kind of something long enough to make it to that rematch later on this year, because there is a distinct possibility that he might not.
Things to think about.
Ahead of a rematch, is he going to stay on with Sugar Hill? Is he going to do that? Because a lot was made of the chaos in the Tyson Fury corner between Tyson Fury's father, John Fury, and Sugar Hill Stewart, the head trainer, that there really shouldn't be a power struggle between them.
But there is. If they are both shouting instructions at Tyson Fury...
Only one of you is the head trainer, and only one of you is being paid to do so, to train Tyson Fury. And it's not John, but that's what was going on. In truth, I don't want to overstate it, because I don't think chaos in Fury's corner is the reason he lost the fight anyway.
No.
There wouldn't have been no chaos in the corner if you weren't losing the fight. It's you losing the fight that caused all that discord.
That chaos.
If you were piling up the points and piling up the rounds, well, I think things would have been a lot more copacetic in the corner.
Still a question that needs an answer. Is Sugar Hill Stewart going to stay on with Tyson Fury for the rematch, or will Tyson Fury sack him the way John's been wanting him to, and will he hire someone else?
Will it make a difference? What exactly can Tyson Fury do differently in a second fight? And I really don't know, because as I've been saying, in terms of boxing, nuts and bolts boxing, he doesn't actually do anything better than Alexander Usyk. So what's he gonna do? Just come in bigger? Hope you can outsize him the way you outsized Wilder?
That's not gonna work.
Get off to a faster start. You don't spend the first 2 rounds dicking around, playing to the crowd. You step into your shots. If you do that, the sooner you do that, the sooner you'll end up the way you did in the 9th round.
Go ahead. Try to get off to a faster start. This guy's ready for you.
And I'm no Monday morning quarterback. I told you. I fucking told you. Usyk can hurt Tyson Fury. And if there is a rematch, he'll finish what the referee didn't let him finish. In the first fight, in the second.
He'll knock him out.